Carol Roth is joining us. Carol, I have so many questions for you today. How are you?
I'm doing well. Some of them I'm not going to be able to answer because insanity, but we'll do our best to muddle our way through this.
Okay. Can you at all give us a common understanding of what SWIFT is?
So the best way I can explain SWIFT is a clearinghouse for the messages about transactions through the international banking system. To kind of dial it back to the U.S., if you send a wire transfer between banks in the U.S., you have a special code. If you do it internationally, there is a SWIFT code, and that entity acts as that sort of clearinghouse between the banks to say, oh, you need to send money from one place to another. So basically cutting off Russia or anybody else means that you don't get to sort of participate in the global banking system in a very rudimentary sort of explanation.
Right, and that is important. Again, take it down to the baby level, but that's important. The reason why you would wire transfer something is because if you write a check, it's going to have to sit there and be verified for funds and everything else. If you are doing big business, you're just moving things quickly because you need that transfer to kick in right away, correct?
True, except for internationally, it often can take a day or more to clear, but it is, again, that sort of middleman, that international clearinghouse. It's based in Belgium for all of the international financial movement, if that makes sense.
Okay, and Europe, according to Joe Biden, didn't want to take that step yet. So they didn't see it. Yeah.
Well, of course they didn't, because, they're getting, if it's your Germany, you're getting 40% of your oil from Russia. So they understand the precarious position they're in. And I'm sure they put a lot of pressure on Joe Biden and saying, listen, we can't afford it. And oh, by the way, geniuses, you don't have the exports now that you're no longer energy independent to be able to help us out here. So what are we going to do? And I imagine those were the types of discussions happening behind closed doors to have a very weak set of sanctions put out against Russia.
So Joe Biden says that the sanctions that he did put on are just mind-numbingly crippling for Putin and Russia. How would you describe them?
Well, he actually had somebody within his administration, one of the members of the Economic Council, that said they weren't meant to disrupt the flow of energy, and basically completely contradicted that. So they seemed kind of like everything the Biden administration has done, much more for show than for any sort of actual impact. If you wanted to have impact, not only would you have put that pressure in terms of taking Russia out from SWIFT, maybe putting sanctions on Putin themselves, disrupting energy, really getting serious. And, certainly none of that transpired.
So, to hit Putin where he lives and to really destroy Russia, the best thing to do is be a massive exporter of oil and drive the price of oil, at least below $80 a barrel, because that's where they make money, is $70, $80 a barrel, anything over that. So drive the price of oil down, cripples him, or cut him off. If you don't do that, it would be like, we're going to sanction Glenn Beck. He can make money in broadcasting, but no ballet dollars are coming his way.
Yeah,
right?
It would be like telling me, oh, well, I'm sorry, Carol, you can no longer eat the cauliflower.
Right.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That's going to devastate me on my diet. Yeah, the reality is, if you look at the Russian economy, about 60% of their GDP comes from the oil and gas exports. So certainly anything that disrupts that, whether it's disrupting getting payment for that, driving down the price overall, or just not allowing them to be able to export it, all of those kinds of things would be devastating. And we have seen brave people in Russia who were marching in the streets saying, we don't want any war. If things are getting worse there economically, those voices are only going to get louder. So that would put that feeling out to the world that Joe Biden was serious and that he wanted to really take a stand, and would make other countries potentially think twice about things they might want to do, like China invading Taiwan. Unfortunately, we did not see that.
So what happened to the stock market yesterday? I mean, you listen to the president, and he is saying there's going to be real pain from the American people. They're gonna really have price increases, disruption of all kinds of things, maybe even a cyber attack, the biggest war possibly since World War II. And he's going to try to ease the pain. And the stock market goes up. Is that because A, the people on Wall Street know this is business as usual, or B, the Fed just buying up more stocks and there's no reality anymore in the stock market?
As the meme says, Glenn, why not both? It's a little bit of each of those. I think there was an expectation that these sanctions were going to be somewhat worse, and that may escalate conflict and or change the ability to get some of the key exports and increase the prices of those. And Russia has many of them, not only oil and gas, but aluminum, wheat and other things. So the fact that Joe Biden was weak, the stock market goes, oh, he's not really serious. And so there's part of the rally on that. The Fed piece of it is that there is this expectation for a rate hike coming up in March in a couple of weeks. And prior to yesterday, the expectation was that there was going to be an increase of 50 basis points, which is 0.5%. And with the conflict, potentially ongoing, stretching out, that gives the Fed a little bit of cover to say, well, it's, uncertain. We're not sure how that's going to play in, yada, yada, yada. And that maybe that means there's only going to be a 25 basis point or 0.25% increase. But whatever it is, it gives the Fed a little bit more cover, whether it's in March or for the rest of the year, to slow play, taking away their monetary support from the market, which the market loves. So I think you have a little bit of both of those yesterday.
Jeez. This is, I've never understood more than now the Shakespeare line, all the world is but a stage. I feel like every day we're watching a show. He's telling the American people, this is really going to hurt you. And we're going to pay a high price at the gas station. And don't you oil producers charge extra and gouge people at this time, while he's buying more oil this week from Russia than we bought the week before. And we're making it easy for Iran and buying Iranian oil as well. None of this is real.
No, it's so frustrating. I mean, Joe Biden has some levers he could pull to do a 180 on the economy, certainly returning our energy independence, firing up those oil and gas leases, returning to the Keystone Pipeline, all of those kinds of things. He could do a 180 on, and it would be very well received. The average American would benefit from it. And, just from even if you're somebody is climate change and, I'm focused on green, the reality is that oil is getting produced anyway. So would you rather have Russia or Iran be the ones that are producing it? Or would you rather have the technological leader of the United States do it in a manner where we know there's a focus on making it more clean and more green? Right. So it fundamentally doesn't make any sense. Other than some of the wonderful things that you've presented in your book, Glenn, The Great Reset, that everybody should read about if they haven't already.
All right. We're with Carol Roth. She is the author of The War on Small Business, a former recovering investment banker. I asked her on today because there's a problem with wheat. There's now, because of this conflict, there's a problem with oil and gas. There's a problem with fertilizer. We are headed for real troubled times, and she's got some tips on what the average person should and can do about it. So, Carol, is all of this excuse of Ukraine? Are we just being played on this with energy prices? Are the energy costs going to go up because of what we're doing? With ESG and cutting the financing of our own oil, slitting our own throat, or Is this Ukraine thing actually playing a role?
So, I mean, this has been going on, as we've seen, for well over a year, good better part of almost 2 years now, and the Ukrainian conflict is just several days old. So, despite the media's attempt to say, "Oh, this is the reason for it," obviously, us bowing out of production, from some of the decisions the Biden administration made, the canceling of oil and gas leases, the canceling of the Keystone Pipeline, whatnot, and also the ESG pressure that made it so that many of the companies that were involved in oil exploration and whatnot, and refinement, not want to do as much of it over the last couple of years. So there has been, a lot of pressure outside, both through government and through sort of this, global ESG fascination that has depressed the U.S.'s position, and obviously that's put some cricks in the road here, as well as the OPEC oil cartel. Obviously, they wanted to make up for some of the lost money that happened over the pandemic. So they did not ramp up productions to the level to meet demand. So all of these things factor in, as well as disruption in the supply chain. It's harder and more expensive to get the refined gasoline to the station. I mean, just so many things that all snowball together. So that has all created a big issue, and it's going to be an ongoing issue whether or not this Russia-Ukraine conflict continues. That being said, if it escalates, yes,
Right.
it will have a further impact on top of what we're already seeing. Currently, we have oil that's over $90 a barrel. It could go over $100 organically before they probably start pushing out more oil. If this escalates from a Russia-Ukraine perspective, you could see $140 a barrel oil. So it's very, very meaningful in terms of that incremental amount, but it's not like without it, we'd be at, $70 or $60.
We see the price of fertilizer, 300% increase. That has something to do with natural gas. We have any oil products, even bug killers that you put on your crops. Wheat is going through the roof today. We are going to be facing some real problems at the supermarket in the next 6 to 8 months. Am I reading that right?
Certainly, I would say we are definitely going to be facing issues. We have been facing issues. Inflation is going to continue. The question is it a problem or is it a mega problem? But either way, you should be prepared. You should be prepared every day, but you should be prepared for this conflict to escalate. Nobody's ever been sad about being over prepared.
Yeah.
Usually happens in the other direction.
Right.
So there are definitely steps that you can take today just to make sure that you have your ducks in a row.
And what are those steps?
So on the energy front, simple things. We don't know what's going to happen, not only with the price, but are there potentially escalating cyber attacks that end up disrupting our own infrastructure? I don't know if you remember way back in the early days of the Joe Biden presidency, he gave Putin a list of here are the critical things that are off limits for a cyber attack. So
Right.
basically a roadmap of everything that they should attack should there be an issue.
Right.
So you as an individual should make sure, with your cars that you keep your gas tanks full, that if you have the ability to store extra gasoline, that you have some extras just in case not only the price goes up, but we end up in a position where there's some rationing. You don't want to be caught in that position. And as you and I have talked about, Glenn, before, for your house, have backup generators and other sources of energy in case there's an issue.
I know that I take propane, and I called yesterday. I just got a delivery, I don't know, a few months ago, and I called them up and said, could you please come out and tap my tank off? They said, sure, you're on a waiting list now. This was yesterday. They said, the phones are ringing off the hook. Your heating oil, everything. You should get on a list now to get that full. So you're paying A, this price, and B, if something happens, you have a full tank.
100%. With other supply chain issues, same kinds of things, both from a price increase standpoint and to make sure you have extras in case of disruptions. Get the extra water, get something that can distill down your water and take the yucky stuff out, just in case there's an issue. Stock up on things that are not perishable in terms of food, stock up on medicine, have an emergency supply kit, all of those things that should something, kind of really go awry here, a big escalation, that you are prepared. And then on the financial standpoint, we were talking about the stock market and being all over the place. This is the time when people who are not sophisticated investors tend to panic. And I want to give a quote from Warren Buffett, whose politics I don't particularly like, but boy, is he a great investor. And his famous quote was always that investors should be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. So when you have those days where the stock market is going down and companies that you like, or the overall stock market, is in that bad position, that's the time when you slowly start putting money to work and building up your positions, or what we call dollar cost averaging into stocks. Do not pull your money out of fear.
Carol, thank you so much. God bless you. We will we'll talk to you again. Carol Roth, kind of our show's financial advice giver, if you will. She watches all of this for us and helping the average person know what to do in these troubled times. Carol Roth, The War on Small Business is the book.